Nobody inside the MotoGP paddock saw it coming. Not the engineers. Not the analysts. Not even the riders who thought they understood every angle of the 2025 season. Yet in one staggering moment, a few cryptic words from Valentino Rossi would tear open a secret Ducati had been guarding for months. A secret that threatened the balance of power. A secret that pulled Francesco Bagnaia into the center of a storm. And gave Toprak Razgatlıoğlu the opening he had waited for his entire career. Because what seemed like a harmless comment was actually the spark that ignited the 2025 MotoGP war. From the very first winter test, something about the atmosphere felt unsettled. Observers expected strength from Ducati, precision from Bagnaia, and consistency from the established names. But almost nobody predicted what would happen when Toprak Razgatlıoğlu rolled out of the pit lane. He didn't arrive quietly. He didn't arrive cautiously. He arrived like an earthquake. Every braking zone became a place where old assumptions broke apart. Telemetry analysts stared at the numbers in disbelief, because nobody had ever forced a MotoGP bike to behave like that. Teams accustomed to Ducati dominance suddenly whispered about a rider who could push the sport into an entirely new dimension. Behind closed doors, technical directors compared notes. Some tried to downplay it, calling it early test noise. But those who studied the data more closely knew the truth. Toprak wasn't just fast. He was redefining what a MotoGP bike could do. And that's when quiet anxiety began spreading inside Ducati's headquarters. But something deeper was already unfolding, hidden far from the public eye. Inside Ducati's race department, debate turned into tension. Engineers long loyal to the Desmosticized traditional V4 philosophy began questioning whether the platform could survive the arrival of a rider like Toprak. Some believed the bike had reached its developmental ceiling. Others insisted the V4 still had unexplored potential, if only Ducati dared to break away from years of refinement. Bagnaia, ever the calm figure, tried to keep the peace. But insiders claim he voiced subtle concerns. He felt the bike was shifting away from the smooth, predictable behavior that defined his world championship runs. Satellite teams added fuel to the internal divide. Their data showed unexpected instability under extreme braking forces, the kind only someone like Toprak could expose. And as Ducati wrestled with the direction of the 2025 engine, one figure from outside the factory walls stepped into the conversation. A legend whose voice still carries more weight than entire engineering departments. Valentino Rossi. And what he said next rattled every team in the paddock. During what was supposed to be a routine media appearance, Rossi casually mentioned something that made the entire MotoGP world stop. A new way of unlocking the V4. He didn't elaborate. He didn't specify which team was involved. He didn't even clarify whether it referred to a concept or a physical upgrade. But that one sentence triggered waves of speculation. Was Ducati developing a new firing order? Were they reshaping torque delivery for aggressive front brake riders? Was this project meant for Bagnaia or someone else entirely? VR46 personnel smiled politely when reporters asked about it. They offered no confirmation, no denial. Yet the energy inside their garage told a different story. A quiet confidence. A hint that Rossi hadn't spoken accidentally. Bagnaia's camp, meanwhile, grew uneasy. If Rossi knew something before the factory riders did, what did that mean for the championship hierarchy? But the real meaning behind Rossi's hint was far more explosive than anyone imagined. Whispers began spreading of a concealed testing program, held far from MotoGP's usual calendar, at a private facility known for absolute secrecy. According to insiders, Ducati had been experimenting with a radical reinterpretation of the V4's behavior. Not to increase raw power, but to reshape how the engine behaved under the violent deceleration forces that define modern MotoGP. Some described it as predictable instability, a controlled chaos that rewarded bravery but punished hesitation. And suddenly, things clicked. This wasn't a bike built for smooth, flowing champions. This was a bike built for warriors. For riders who threw the machine into corners with violence. For riders who thrived in chaos. For riders like Toprak. Ducati's leadership now faced an impossible choice. Build the bike for their reigning champion, or lean into a concept that might let an outsider unlock its full potential. And once the prototype touched real asphalt, everything changed fast. Test riders returned with mixed reactions. Some described the new configuration as exhilarating. Others called it unforgiving. The bike dove into corners like a predator, stabilizing only when pushed with absolute confidence. A normal MotoGP rider would struggle. But a rider with Toprak's brutal, anchor-dropping technique could make it sing. This created a political nightmare inside Ducati. Factory engineers wanted to refine the system to match Bagnaia's style. Others argued the sport was evolving and Ducati had to evolve with it, even if their champions struggled adapting. The division grew. Meetings became tense. And for the first time in years, Ducati felt unstable at its core. And then something happened that pushed the entire situation into chaos. It began as a rumor. A whisper shared between performance analysts. A spreadsheet viewed by the wrong pair of eyes. But soon, prototype data from Ducati's secret program began circulating across the paddock. And the numbers were staggering. Enhanced corner entry confidence. Reduced engine jitter during violent load transfers. Torque shaping optimized for unpredictable braking aggression. Engineers didn't need the full blueprint. They understood immediately. This wasn't a minor evolution. It was a new language of V4 behavior. Some VR46 technicians were rumored to have adapted quicker than expected, fueling speculation that Rossi's comment had been intentional. Fans online turned the story into wildfire. Threads exploded. Debates raged. People demanded answers. And the pressure reached its breaking point when Bagnaia finally addressed it himself. Bagnaia rarely shows strain. He speaks with calm assurance, never revealing more than he intends. But during a key media session, he said something that stunned reporters. "We're adjusting to a new direction." It was subtle, measured, but those 6 words told the paddock everything it needed to know. Bagnaia was adapting to the bike, not the other way around. Ducati executives hurried to contain the fallout, insisting nothing major had changed. But the public already knew the truth. MotoGP wasn't entering another predictable Ducati season. It was entering a civil war of ideas. And Bagnaia was caught in the middle. But the story still lacked one ingredient: Toprak's response. And when it arrived, it shook the sport again. During a high-profile winter test, under perfect track conditions, Toprak unleashed a lap that sent shivers through every garage. It wasn't just fast. It was defiant. The way he slammed the front end into corners seemed to defy physics. Telemetry hinted that his style aligned perfectly with the rumored V4 evolution, even though he wasn't riding a Ducati. Observers stared. Technicians whispered. And suddenly, teams realized the nightmare scenario. Toprak might understand Ducati's new weapon better than Ducati's own riders. Social media erupted instantly. Fans framed the rivalry as destiny. Pundits predicted an unpredictable season. And that performance forced Rossi to clarify what he'd meant all along. But nobody expected what came out of his mouth next. In a careful but unmistakably pointed statement, Rossi explained that his comment referred not to a single component, but an entirely new philosophy of engine behavior. A philosophy designed for the future. For riders capable of bending MotoGP bikes into shapes nobody thought possible. He suggested that adaptability, not tradition, would define the next championship era. And in that moment, everything changed. Ducati executives reluctantly confirmed the existence of the experimental project, though they insisted it was merely developmental. But the truth was already out. The 2025 season wouldn't just be a battle of riders. It would be a battle of eras. Bagnaia, the master of refinement. Toprak, the king of chaos. And Rossi, the architect of the new frontier. Yet the real storm would only begin once the first race lights turned on. As the paddock arrived for the opening round, the tension was unmistakable. Bagnaia walked with the weight of expectation and uncertainty. His calm expression couldn't mask the quiet pressure of a bike evolving beneath his feet. Toprak, meanwhile, entered the season light on his shoulders. He had nothing to defend, only chaos to unleash. Ducati engineers moved with urgency, caught between two philosophies. Some chased refinement. Others pushed toward Rossi's vision of a violent, future-proof V4. And above it all, Rossi's words lingered like thunder in the distance. MotoGP wasn't just preparing for another season. It was preparing for a collision of ideas, styles, and legacies. Because the truth had become impossible to ignore. This rivalry was no longer about speed. No longer about machinery. No longer about traditions. It was about the future of MotoGP itself. And the first lap of 2025 would decide who shapes that future.